Hey, HorseCenter fans, we are here post-Breeders' Cup. We're finally getting off the Breeders' Cup train, Matt. We're starting a new train, and it's headed to South Florida.
Yeah, Brian, it's time to start talking about the Pegasus World Cup. It seems like we've got a solid group of 10 horses who are interested in going in the race. I think it might be one of the best fields from top to bottom.
Absolutely. This Pegasus World Cup, the 2019 edition, will have Breeders' Cup winners, multiple Breeders' Cup winners in there. Should be a deep field. Matt and I are going to preview it for you now. Watch it on HorseCenter. Welcome to another edition of HorseCenter, everyone. I am Brian Zipsy, and as always, I have the great pleasure of being joined by my co-host to the East Coast. That's Matt Shipman. How are you today, Matt?
I'm good, Brian. How are you down in Kentucky?
Matt, I'm hot. I'm winning money betting the races again. Life is good. No, seriously though, everything is good, Matt. How about yourself? I haven't seen you in about a week now. Life good out there in the East Coast? I'll be visiting soon.
That I am looking forward to. The day after Thanksgiving, I'll get a little break from the family onslaught, and we'll go hang out at the Big A Aqueduct. What could be better?
I'm looking forward to that too, Matt. I'll bring the turkey sandwiches. Hey, Matt, that's kind of a segue here because today is moving day. We're moving on. We've been talking about the Breeders' Cup, and for good reason here on HorseCenter for a long time. It feels like we've been talking about the Breeders' Cup, Matt, for months now. Now we are moving on. There's other big races on the horizon. Kentucky Derby for one, but I'm thinking, how about a big race in January down in South Florida? Palm trees, Matt, South Beach, Gulfstream Park is what I'm talking about. Of course, the Pegasus World Cup, 9 furlongs on the dirt for $9 million, Matt. You want to preview this big race and kind of an early look, HorseCenter style?
Yeah, Brian, let's talk about the Pegasus. I think we got a pretty good idea of a whole bunch of horses who at this point are at least fairly serious about entering the third Pegasus World Cup.
Yeah, Matt, these early looks, you know, we never know the field for sure. I'm sure this field will shift and shimmy just a little bit. But, yeah, I think we do. It's about 10 weeks out. It's January 26th, the last Saturday of January at Gulfstream Park, as I said. And right now we're looking at 10 horses. We think there's a good chance that these 10 will show up. I think some are more certain than others, but it's a nice list, Matt. And as I'm looking at these 10 horses we have on our list, I realize that 9 of them, mind you, 9 of the 10 we saw run Saturday, Breeders' Cup Saturday at Churchill Downs. So I guess we look at that day as an important prep? No, we can't call the Breeders' Cup a prep, but as an important day leading towards the 2019 Pegasus World Cup. And of course, the favorite, Matt, and the horse that we'll be talking about most here is the horse who starred on Breeders' Cup Saturday. That was the classic winner, Accelerate, Matt, and you and I both talked about him as a potential horse of the year.
Yeah, Brian, and I think it's interesting also to note that you pointed out that 9 of these horses were in the Breeders' Cup, and I think that's an indication that the quality from top to bottom, if you want to say, but there are a lot more quality horses that are potential runners in this year's Pegasus World Cup compared to the first year when, you know, there was a lot of grousing about the fact that take away the top 2 or 3, the field was pretty undistinguished. So that's a good thing for this year's Pegasus Cup. And of course, we're talking about Accelerate in here. And hey, after he answered questions about traveling and running outside of California with his glowing victory in the Breeders' Cup Classic, 1 1/8, 1 1/4, Pegasus Cup is 1 1/8. I don't see any reason why Accelerate is not going to win the race.
Yeah, well, Accelerate is the horse to beat. He's going to be our early morning line favorite here that we'll show a little bit later, Matt. But yeah, he's only run outside California twice, and they were both very good. The Oaklawn Handicap, where City of Light beat him, but he was a very good second. And then, of course, the Breeders' Cup Classic, where he was a winner. Speaking of the Breeders' Cup Classic, Matt, 9 horses ran that Saturday afternoon at Churchill. 8 were Breeders' Cup. 1, of course, was Audible, who ran in the Cherokee Run Stakes that day. 5 of them ran in the Breeders' Cup Classic that we're thinking could very well end up in the Pegasus World Cup, Matt. Of course, we have Accelerate, 6 out of 7 this year with a narrow loss at Oaklawn. Great year, big year, championship year for him. His biggest wins, though, I will say this, his biggest wins did come at 10 furlongs. So maybe the switch back to 9 furlongs on a track that's new to him, Gulfstream Park, is enough reason to think that he is somewhat vulnerable. He's been visiting the stud farm a little early. He's not working at the stud farm, mind you, Matt, but he did visit the stud farm already, and he's going to go back to California before making the trip to South Florida. But in that Breeders' Cup Classic, we had Guinevere rally for second. We had Yoshida, a wide rally for fourth, although he just missed third. Mendelssohn, again, was the horse on the lead. And much like the Jockey Club Gold Cup, I thought he ran a pretty good race to kind of stick around where he did. He was fifth in the Breeders' Cup Classic. And then McKinsey, a horse I really wasn't on. I know a lot of people were on off that Penn Derby win in his return. Faded to 12th. McKinsey is another horse. McKinsey's a horse that might represent Bob Baffert in here. And he's a horse that could bounce back off of that classic disaster.
Yeah, Brian. They're like we said, they're a quality group in there. I will be honest with you, Brian. I am not going to question Accelerate any longer. I've done that long enough. I believe that he will handle the 1 1/8 just as well as the 1 1/4. So I'm not fighting the Accelerate thing anymore. Audible was so super impressive in that Cherokee run in a 7 furlong sprint, which is not a distance that he it runs well at. He loves Gulfstream Park. Victories in the Holy Bull, the Florida Derby. Pletcher's going to give him a prep race in the Harlan's Holiday at Gulfstream once the championship meet opens up down there. I think Audible's going to be dangerous in the race. Of course, Guinevere. This is his home track, Florida. We know he loves the racetrack. Again, I think he appreciates the extra distance to get his big kick going, but he's always dangerous. I'll tell you, Brian, Mendelssohn, my opinion is let's get him back on the turf. Enough with the dirt. I want to see him back on the turf. He hasn't been on the turf since he won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf more than a year ago, and he was pretty impressive on that day. They got that big turf, Pegasus turf race. I don't know if that's what they're calling it, that they're trying to get going this year. Come on, guys. Put Mendelssohn in that race. $6 million purse in there. Enough with the dirt with Mendelssohn. So, and then McKinsey, he's going to have to make a tremendous turnaround to be a threat in the Pegasus.
Yeah, fair enough, Matt. Yoshida was the one in the Classic you didn't mention. And, you know, he's only had 2 dirt races. And I actually thought the Breeders' Cup Classic was pretty good because he was widest of all. And like I said, he was running down the stretch. Having said that, I don't know if that's going to translate. 9 furlongs at Gulfstream, a little bit more of a speed favoring track. Mendelssohn, you make a really good point, whether he's in this race or not. It seems to me that what they're saying now is we're going to see dirt. There's more money on dirt, although you're right, $7 million for the Pegasus turf is a pretty big pot and certainly a weaker field that he'd have to beat there. We'll see what happens in that field as we get closer to the race. But I think Mendelssohn would change this race if he goes or if he doesn't go, because if he does go, as he's shown lately, he is the speed of the speed, and I think it makes it a little bit harder for horses that are on or near the lead. maybe makes it a little bit easier for horses who like to rally, like Gunavera and Yoshida. Matt, we need to talk about Gunavera. You're talking about Audible already. Those, out of these 10 horses, those are the only two that have ever run over Gulfstream Park's main track. So there is a distinct advantage there, and I think you like them both a little bit. Maybe you like Audible a little bit more than I do. The 7 furlong race, I don't think he beat a heck of a lot, and much like McKinsey, I think he's going to be making a huge jump up in class. He's never run against older horses before that race, and now all of a sudden he's going to have to try to beat the best dirt horses in the world at 9 furlongs in January. The one good thing about Audible, which we didn't see from McKinsey, is that he will have a couple preps before the big one, so that might help Audible. But looking at the records over the track, Audible, two big wins in 2 races, as you mentioned. Gunavera, this is his home track. He's run there 9 times, folks. He's never run a bad race at Gulfstream Park. He's won 4 out of those 9. Big win in the Fountain of Youth a ways back, but last year he was 3rd in the Pegasus, albeit a well-back 3rd behind the winner, Gunrunner, of course. Matt, we haven't even mentioned some of the other big names coming out of the Breeders' Cup, winners, second-place finishers in the Breeders' Cup. I'm going to just mention them now, and I'll let you go. Breeders' Cup Distaff winner Monomoy Girl, I think there's a good chance we see her face the boys for the first time in the Pegasus World Cup. City of Light, the only horse to beat Accelerate last year, big winner of the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, and the horse he beat, the rallying second in the Dirt Mile, Seeking the Soul. We expect to see all 3 of those at the Pegasus World Cup.
Yeah, let me start with City of Light, because he was certainly such an impressive winner in the Dirt Mile at Churchill Downs, and fans might be saying, yeah, but he's a sprinter. Yeah, but he's a one-turn kind of horse. Well, for the majority of his races, that's true. But let's not forget, at Oaklawn Park, he did beat Accelerate going 2 turns. So he can run that 2-turn distance. I think he's a horse that is absolutely on the upswing, and on the Gulfstream Park track, which always plays kindly to horses that like to be on or near the lead. It seems like a really good setup for City of Light, one that we need to certainly take seriously. I've got very, very mixed feelings about Monomoy Girl in the Pegasus World Cup, taking on the guys. My initial reaction is, why? What's the point? There is no upside to this. I don't honestly think she's fast enough. Speed figure wise, she's below a lot of these guys. But then on the other hand, you might say, hey, why not take a shot? What has she got to lose? She's got her Eclipse Award wrapped up. She will have received her Eclipse Award for top 3-year-old filly at this point. But I don't know, Brian. I'm going to stick with my first reaction with Monomoy Girl, and that is, why? What's the point here after such a long campaign and her coming back as a 4-year-old? I do want to chime in about Audible again for a second. You said that he's going to be taking on older horses for this first time. Yes, that's true, but he is an older horse himself at that point. And Seeking of Gold, who rallied nicely in the Dirt Mile, and probably will get a good setup, but I think I'll prefer other ralliers in there, like Gunavera, like Yoshida, over Seeking the Soul.
Yeah, Matt, I agree with you. Seeking the Soul, he had a chance. He's actually the 3rd horse that ran at Gulfstream Park. I forgot about him. He had his chance last year in this race, and I think the track might not be as favorable to him as Churchill, where he ran a good second last time. So I'm with you there. Gunavera, especially on this track, is the horse I fear much more coming from off the pace. whereas Seeking the Soul might be up against it. The last horse on our list of 10, Matt, I think is another horse. I can't throw anybody out in this race. The last horse is Battle of Midway, who is a talented horse, won the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile over a year ago, had a long layoff. I know he failed in the Kelso in his second race back, but then his last race was more like it. I guess it was a listed stake out at Santa Anita to come to the top. Trained by Jerry Hollendorfer, a lot of talent back there. If he's on his way back up, he's a horse that can win from different places on the track. So I wouldn't completely throw him out, and he's a nice addition. If we get these 10, Matt, it's going to be a nice field. Monomoy Girl, I want to talk a little bit about Monomoy Girl because I do like her in here a little bit more. I think there's a lot of reason to run her. They kind of stayed inside the box last year as a 3-0 filly. She was never beaten to the wire. 7 huge races she ran last year, culminating with that big win in the distaff. First time against older fillies. Now she'll try the males probably in the Pegasus World Cup, and I think it makes a lot of sense. She's never been farther than 9, but at 9 furlongs, obviously she is undefeated and just a real tigress going 9 furlongs. So this, I think, is a good time to try the boys rather than a race like the Breeders' Cup Classic where she'd have to go 10 furlongs out at California. Gulfstream should be a track that she likes with her speed, but she's another filly that can win from different places on the track. So I could certainly see her fourth and running a good fourth early and then making her move. So Monomoy Girl, you know, it's hard to keep doubting her as good as she's come up in all these races, Matt. I'm going to be off Audible. Let's talk a little bit about our picks here now, Matt. These are early picks. I'm sure they're going to change a little bit in the coming months, but I'm going to be off of Audible a little bit. You know who my top pick is? It's the same horse that was my top pick in the Breeders' Cup Classic, and that's Guinevere. I thought he ran a very good race in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Gulfstream is his track. This is a spot that they point for as well as the Breeders' Cup Classic. And if there's Mendelsohn and Accelerate and McKinsey and Monomoy Girl and City of Light, I think there is a strong pace. I don't think, as deep as this bunch is, I don't think there's any great horses in here. Accelerate proved to have a super season in 2018, but he still doesn't scare horses off, Matt. And I think if things break Guinevere's way and they run fast early, 30-1 in the Breeders' Cup Classic, we won't see 30-1 here, but I still think you could see some nice odds on Guinevere. He'll be my top pick. Who's your top pick?
Brian, my top pick is going to be Accelerate. As I said earlier in this show, it's time for me to stop fighting, Accelerate, and to jump on the bandwagon.
Well, that combination in the Breeders' Cup Classic got me a lot of money with trifectas. So, I'm glad you're finally on Accelerate a little bit, Matt. I am going to pick him for second in here, although a lukewarm second because I have a lot of respect for City of Light. City of Light was my single in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. And, distance-wise, Matt, he ran that really good Oaklawn handicap to beat Accelerate down at Oaklawn. But then a month later, both of their next races, he did not embarrass himself at all at 1.25 miles in the Gold Cup at Santa Anita. Of course, Accelerate was best that day. City of Light did fade to third. But I think once we cut back to 9 furlongs, I think that makes a big difference. So I actually thought about putting City of Light higher than third. But I am a little bit worried about the specter of Mendelsohn and a lot of early speed in there. So I have City of Light down in third. And for my fourth, I'm not going to discount Monomoy Girl. She's done too much. She's too good at 9 furlongs. I want to see her run for $9 million against the males and see what she can do. Plenty of time to run against the fillies later in the year. So she'll be my fourth pick in here.
And following along with what you said, Brian, that this field, that they're, pretty evenly matched bunch, no gun runners in here to scare everybody away. And because of that, I have Audible right in there, right in my top 4. I think Audible is a threat to win this race. I think people are still forgetting what a good horse he is. His performance in the Kentucky Derby was very, very good. And indications in the Cherokee run that he has come back and he is in good health and in good form. I think he's dangerous on the Gulfstream Park track. City of Light is also on my list. I think he's a big threat in this race also. He's versatile. He's got that kind of speed, tactical speed. I think the 1 1/8 is just fine with him. And I have Gunnevera in the 4th spot. That doesn't mean that I think that Gunnevera is going to finish 4th. I think Gunnevera has a very good shot to once again get in the top 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. I just can't pick him to win, Brian. It's been so long since he's won a big race, something beyond an allowance. I know it's Gulfstream Park and he loves it, but the 30-1 odds and the 40-1 odds, Brian, are going to be long gone in this race, and I can't pick him on top at the shorter price.
Yeah, and for me, Audible, Matt, I'm going to speak to what I said a little bit earlier before. Yeah, he hasn't raced against good older horses yet. And it's not my point that, well, he's a 3-year-old running against olders in January. Of course, he will be older, but I just worry that this is going to be a big move up for him. But you could probably say that for Monomoy Girl or maybe City of Light to some extent, although he's raced against Accelerate twice, seeking the Soul Battle of Midway. Those horses that weren't in the Classic, it's going to be a step up because this race looks as deep, every bit as deep as the Breeders' Cup Classic, with some of the big names coming from the Classic, and then the Distaff, and then the Dirt Mile, and then Battle of Midway and Audible. So if we get most of these 10, throw in a few names over the next couple months, Matt, we have a really interesting race, Pegasus World Cup. I'm all for, by the way, let me say this about the Pegasus World Cup. It's been a strange incarnation of this race. It used to be the Don, a Grade 1 race. But I'm all for bigger races for older horses. January in Florida, what's happening is this still could be a race where horses are set to retire and they run one more time. But I'm all for bigger races for older horses, Matt. I want to see these horses like Accelerate running past 3, running past the first race of their 4-year-old career. So if we had some more races that really celebrated the older horses, I think it would be a good thing for the sport. And we'd have horses kind of the anti-Justify, where they're sticking around a little bit longer and helping to bring more fans to the sport to recognize the big names running over and over again.
Yeah, Brian, and without question, that is something that all race fans want. And I think racing in general, and I guess this phenomenon that started in the last couple of years with the Pegasus World Cup, that they get that one more race in the following year, like Gunrunner did last year, and Arrogate before they head off to stud. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, and the good news about this Pegasus World Cup is we will see a little bit of that. We'll see that certainly from the Breeders' Cup Classic. Certainly champion older dirt male and possibly Horse of the Year Accelerate. He will retire after the Pegasus World Cup. I think City of Light's going to retire after this race. But most of the other names on this list, Matt, we probably will see. Mendelsohn looks like he might be running his last few races before retirement. But a lot of these names, they've said, Yoshida and Gunnevera and Monomoy Girl and Audible are coming back for their 4-year-old seasons or beyond, depending on the horse. So that's good news. All right, Matt, that's our early look at the Pegasus World Cup. We threw a morning line there at you, and Matt and I have some early picks. Like I said, 10 weeks out, there's going to be more big news coming from this race. But as of now, 10 weeks out, Matt, these 10 horses we list as possibles or probables looks like a really good field and a race to get excited about. So that's good news. Hey, before we say goodbye, Matt, can I get a parting shot from you?
Yeah, Brian, it was great talking about the Pegasus and looking ahead and being excited about another big race. Of course, I want to thank all the fans for watching the show. And as always, I want to thank our friend Brett Workman, our producer, for putting together the show.
Thanks to you for watching the show. Again, fans of HorseCenter, we love you here at HorseCenter. Thanks to Brett Workman. Thanks to our sponsor, Derby Wars, the best contest site out there. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel here at Horse Racing Nation, please do so. And Matt and I will have a lot more to talk about. Hey, Matt, our new venture, Derby Day Racing, we got both of them. Sooner Schooner, closely related to Accelerate, by the way, Matt, and Pain is My Gain. They're both heading down to New Orleans. So they'll be at the fairgrounds. Wintering in New Orleans, that's not bad, is it?
It sure isn't. Hey, you did a little hot walking with Sooner Schooner, you said the other day.
Yeah, and I made sure it wasn't on video, so no one can see me actually hot walking Sooner Schooner. But I did get to. Buck Bradley said, "Sure, Brian, why don't you walk her around the barn a little bit, give her some exercise around the barn the other day." So I did that. That was fun. First time in a long time. Derby Day Racing will have a big year, hopefully in 2019, as will HorseCenter, folks. We'll be back next week. We'll be talking about some big fall races coming up, the Clark Handicap, the Cigar Mile, and who knows, maybe Matt and I will have some interesting other things to present right here on HorseCenter.